80,000 gallon tank. That's actually the reserve tank. I'll open it up, we'll see what the inside looks like. Dual 5-ton air conditioners, and you will note that they run most of the time. Yep, we're up and running within 2 minutes. 180,000 watts, approximately $50,000. It's got an $18,000 fuel cleaning system on it. Throw it over to manual, and I want to note where this reading is. It's working, it's working properly. At the start, it operates off this small 50-gallon tank. The way that we're set up, we have two 5,000-gallon tanks that continuously cycle through that cleaner during the day. If the generator came online, it uses this tank and pumps from the big tanks into that tank. What I like to refer to as the frogometer. See, we have frogs. What these tell us is how much is in the tanks. They felt that me standing on top of the tanks with a stick was insufficient to judge their actual capacity. So, this is how you fill them.
Yeah, we got a peek of the. Here are the actual. Oh boy, these things are huge.
The instant it gets below 8,000 gallons, I have them refilled. I never let them go below 80%. And that amount of fuel, we figured it out calculator-wise, will run us, if we run daytime, only 6 months. This is the bottom of where we were before.
Yeah, the two air conditioners and the generator.
And where the power comes in, we've got 400 amp service, and it's 480 volts.
And I take it everything's underground, so
oh yeah,
cables.
Yes. When they built the station, they did it right. From the road, it comes down to that gate that we came in. I'm gonna take you back around the other way. That pole, oh yeah, that pole, the cables actually come in and then go straight underground and buried all the way to here. A lot of the stuff they did right. And it has no interference with our signal whatsoever. That's a 20-foot, 3.5 inch diameter copper pipe that I personally drove into the ground.
And how far down is it?
20 feet.
20 feet?
Yes. And what I did to be really nice with it, I filled it with salt. And I packed the ground around it with salt. And that helps with the ground. It is not the only ground, but it is the buildings and the main ground. Everything attaches to it. And there are two other 20-foot sections around the building too. But we don't have too many lightning problems because we do have a very direct path to ground. You're looking south now. Those two towers are dead during the day. Tower on the right is Tower 3, tower on the left is Tower 6. Tower 3 is a negative tower that actually absorbs energy at night to keep our signal from going too far to the southwest. The tower on the left is a very low power tower. They're all the same, they're all 70-degree towers, 384 feet tall. All right, you're looking north now. To the right-hand lower corner is tower number 5. That's our monster tower on night pattern. It produces all by itself almost 50 kilowatts. To the left is left lower right-hand corner is tower number 2. It's the one with the doghouse underneath it. It receives our STL signal from the studios in Ocoee. Basically, that's all the little doghouse does. It's also a negative tower, but a nighttime, a daytime negative tower. It sucks about 700 watts. It doesn't produce any power at all. Upper right-hand corner, or the northeast corner, is tower number 4. It is the hot tower during the day. You get within 50 feet of it and you can hear whatever's playing on the air daytime. Upper left-hand corner is tower number 1. It basically guides tower number 4 so that we end up with that monster lobe going towards the east even during the daytime. And in fact, tower number 2 at night is not a negative tower, but the director for tower number 5 and throws most of the signal to the east. We end up with a essentially night pattern, 500,000 watts of power in the main lobe, and day pattern about 375,000 watts in the main lobe.
We're going inside the building. Thank you, sir.
take out the left first.
Okay.
All right, work area, and what I've done is I've gathered equipment that I've had for years from everywhere. I carry parts enough to basically fix anything that might break. One little capacitor over here can be as expensive as $2,500, so it pays to have them on hand, and they have to be custom made. All right, the real expensive ones I keep in here. These are ones you'd... That one. And these two. Tower number 4 has 4 of these in it. These are in the $3,000 to $4,000 each category. And they rarely go bad, but again, working so many stations, I had a bunch of spare parts. Here's one average lightning hit on tower number 5. This is a sample transformer for, they call them a toroid. And it still functions, but it doesn't work right, so I had to replace it. I save stuff to that. I just sort of like to keep all of the manuals and everything readily available, so anything that might break, we can figure out how to fix it.
Gee, it looks like you've got some test equipment built into the actual
Yes, power
woodwork
supply
here.
built in, and oh, there's a built-in speaker, just enough to be able to work on something. It's actually better equipped than my workshop at the studio. All of the studio audio comes in, of course, from that little doghouse underneath the tower. Comes underground to here. This is the last processor before the transmitter. All it does is peak limit and compress slightly. The transmitter is behind you. This is actually the modulation monitor, splatter monitor, and then the antenna monitor, so we can watch the phase and loop readings from each individual tower.
So when you say splatter, we are pretty much ahead of the new FCC regs that are coming out.
Oh yeah, we have no splatter. We're well within tolerance. This is a remote control system, so the studio can control what happens up here. We have a burglar alarm. We have day and night patterning. Of course, it has to be swapped. They can keep an eye on the building's temperature, many other things. So.
And then here is your parameters for the towers, all 6 towers,
Yes.
I guess.
And it automatically, because it's hooked together with the remote control, it automatically cycles through them and reads all of the parameters for the towers, so that the guys at the studios do not have to sit there and take readings continuously. We're able to listen off air.
Is that people with diabetes get rid of some of the problems by using either insulin or pills that allow the body to make more insulin.
Over here's the phaser. And we're set at 32.2 amps, 32.4 amps in that neighborhood. 50 and 0 on a bridge, basically almost no movement. Now if we have some music playing with a lot of high frequencies, you'll see a little jumping in the bridge. But I've got the sensitivity all the way up. In fact, if I was to tune to 50 and then 10, you'd see how close. This is just basically looking at the impedance between the transmitter and the phaser. Overall, you're looking at all the towers. Had this changed, I would know there's a problem with one tower. Or more than one tower. But it's supposed to be set for 50 and 0, which is the most efficient impedance to be coming out of the transmitter. The transmitter itself, in fact, I'll show you one of the... Do it the right way. Made noise. This is a 1,000 watt AM transmitter. There's 123 of them in this Harris DX50. They're MOSFET in design. They're behind these grills here. There's a total of 128 of them.
That's amazing.
When I first came here, many were blown. I repaired them. Since then, we've had no further trouble. Let me turn the light off. I hope you can catch this. The way that a digital switching transmitter works is it uses the first 50 to build your carrier. Every time that there's audio, it'll turn as many of these on as it needs. That's how it gets better than 90% efficiency. If you look down in here, you'll see the first 50 stay lit all the time. And then the rest of them flash with the audio. If any of those was not lighting, or if any of them had a bright red light on either side of it, that would mean it was bad. This flow chart for the transmitter, and it will help me diagnose anything that's wrong with it. If there was a problem, for instance, if we got zonked by lightning, this light would do that. And then normally, if it was a real lightning strike, it would stay red until I could see if there was any damage.
I go close in here.
powers up, it does a self-test, and it will not allow itself to come up if it finds a problem. It will make the guys call me, and then I get to come out and fix it. Because of the transmitter's design to change patterns, you do not have to shut this off. The only thing that ever shuts this off is if we lose electricity at this building, it will shut off for the amount of minutes it takes for the generator to come on. 24 hours a day it stays running, and it's got basically a mute switch. If we go to change pattern, we mute the RF. We do not shut the transmitter down. That way there's no time lag for the blowers to come up to speed and so on. It's just much, much more efficient. There's better than 90% efficiency. The old transmitters being like 75%. Relationship to forward and reflected power is worse on day pattern than it is on night. But we have basically about 200 watts coming back out of 50,000 watts going out. So the SWR is very, very low. And it's phenomenal for this sort of an array. Generally, directional arrays will have more reflected power than what we are able to see there. Behind you is a 50,000 watt dummy load, which will instantly heat this room to the temperature of 140 degrees.
Amazing.
It has 4 220 volt blowers. These are all 50 ohm power resistors. And they glow red hot when it's running. With the blowers going, they glow red hot. And I use it as little as I can, simply because it just gets a little unbearable in here. This is the only remnant of the Cypress Gardens transfer room. All the rest has been replaced. But in their wisdom, and they were right, if you've got a 50,000 watt dummy load that works, keep it. Very expensive. 400 amp service. Generator switchover, all automatic. Or it can be run manually if we had to for any particular reason. The transmitter has its own step start panel that brings it up slowly so it protects itself. In order to make the 480 volts into something usable for like the bomb shelter, we had to install transformers. This one runs only the bomb shelter, the outlets that are in the wall. Takes the 480 and drops it down to 120. The bottom one does the rest of the build. So we have backups for the backups. Spare coils. When lightning strikes one of our towers, it can take one of those coils and go. So this way I have a few on hand. Again, custom made, very expensive. This would be a 40 amp coil. This would be a 30 amp coil. This would be a 20 amp coil. The difference is the surface area around the coil itself. These are hollow, and RF travels on the skin.
So would it be depending on the tower, what type of coil you would use, depending on the load for the tower?
Yes. And this one, for instance, I think is 40 ohm. Those I think are like 35 ohm. The length, of course, makes the resistance difference. This I think is like 60 ohm. But some of the towers these would be inappropriate for. Others are pretty generic. For instance, some of the towers would require 2 16 ohm coils, which means if I had to replace a bolt, these, as long as they're larger than 16, could be strapped down to be 16. Now, I don't have replacements for every coil, but then again, I do have enough copper pipe to make one if I had to. Until we... Alright, this is night pattern, and these two boxes, all they do basically is control the amount of power and at what phase each tower receives the RF, so that we can basically steer the pattern around. Now, the FCC doesn't like you doing that. What they want you to do is be able to maintain your nulls. We protect stations, for instance, in Mexico and Georgia. We used to protect a station at the Grand Turks of Caicos Island, which I don't believe is going to be real necessary anymore, seeing that they've been nice enough to operate at 100,000 watts non-directionally. So, but in any event, international treaty requires that we limit the amount of power leaving at night and during the day because we're a 50,000 watt station.
So these two units are night.
Yes. These two units are day. They just happen to put the bridge in this particular unit. These control only 4 towers, which would be the reason for that. Those control 6 towers. When pattern change happens, relays go clunk, and it just switches between boxes. fluorescent bulb, and it lights up real pretty. If you reach up and grab this, that is not the blowers. That's the RF going through it. Feel that, you'll like it. That's the actual power going through the center of that. With the blowers dead, I mean, I can physically kill the blowers, it still does the same thing. I have no idea why, it just vibrates the tube. I spent probably 6 months out here myself, redid and replaced all of the wiring that the place had. It was done by a consultant who wanted to get the job done, get paid, and get out of here. He didn't even really care much about getting the job done. So I went through and redid everything. The Federal Emergency Management Agency provided surge suppression on the equipment level. They provided it, and I'll show you in the switchover for the generator, they provided it on a massive level. We're even controlling the power that comes into the building. And at each tower we have surge suppression installed. We very rarely have a lightning problem. These are a story all in themselves. Each tower is a different distance from the building, of course, but each one of these sample lines had to be the same distance, or the same length. The longest one of these is just under 1,600 feet. So each one of these is 1,600 feet, and what's left over is coiled up underneath this building, actually doing nothing. But if they were not exactly the same length, then they wouldn't have the same relationship between each other, and they wouldn't work properly.
And that's what they call a hard line, which is not real flexible.
No.
They're easy to work with.
Oh, no. No, and we've had some of it go bad at the different, tower number 1 in particular had a fitting go bad on it. I thought that we had lost the toroid. That was the item I showed you earlier that tower number 5 got lightning hit on. But it turned out that the fitting itself in here, when they installed this actual end connector on it, they didn't clean the center. The center electrode is solid, and it's got some sort of a plastic coating over the outside of it. They didn't clean it sufficiently, so it went bad. Okay. Each tower has 4. I have enough for 1 tower. Generally, I keep enough for 2 towers, but we just replaced 1 tower's worth. These are 600 watt. Each beacon has 1 down and 1 up. That's why sometimes when you see a tower beside the road, and you'll notice one beacon's brighter than the other, is because one bulb.
So they're paired. There are 2 of those, huh?
Yes, 2 in each beacon, and then 2 beacons on each tower. And they flash alternately, and they last a long, long time. Now, lightning will take them out instantly. Just pop the filament, and they're all done. That's why I keep some spare. The FCC gives you a very limited amount of time to get anything done about it. And generally 48 hours is all I let them go.
So these are the top of the tower markers. 2 of those would be the
top, yes, top and the middle. Now the side light markers are basically standard bulbs that are super bulbs. They're not any brighter than a normal bulb, but they last 2 to 3 times longer than a household bulb. Of course, they cost about 10 times more. I keep some of them on hand also. And these say they're 116 watt and 8,000 hours is what they're supposed to last. And your average home bulb, I think, is in the neighborhood of 750 to 1,000 hours in comparison. So they last 8 to 10 times longer than a standard household bulb. I keep the amenities of home here. We have coffee, we have snacks just in case, because when things really get hectic out here, I never know whether I'm going to stay a day or several days. Just wanted to show some parts. I keep copper and enough pieces basically to fix anything that might break.
Nice bright shiny copper too.
Now this will give you an idea of what the copper that is in the ground outside looks like. It's a hollow piece. This was some scrap that was left over. This is also the coax that runs between the transmitter and the phaser.
Okay, thanks a lot, Jake.